The winter air bit at Elon's face as he loaded the last bag into the trunk of the rented SUV. He glanced at his watch and then at the darkening sky. The snowflakes were getting bigger, falling faster. This wasn't part of the plan. "Are you sure about this?" his daughter Zia asked, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. She stood beside him, arms crossed against the chill, her dark hair peeking out from under a wool hat. "The cabin's only 2 hours away," Elon said with the confidence that had built multiple companies. "We'll be sitting by a fire before you know it." He hadn't seen much of Sia lately. Between running Tesla, SpaceX, and his other ventures, and her busy high school schedule, their time together had shrunk to brief conversations and occasional dinners. This weekend retreat was supposed to fix that, a chance to reconnect away from the noise of their everyday lives. The small regional airport behind them wasn't much to look at. Just a single runway, a modest terminal, and now, their unexpected temporary stop. Their private jet had reported hydraulic problems mid-flight, forcing the pilot to land at the nearest airport as a precaution. The nearest major city was hours away. "We could just stay at a hotel," Gia suggested, scrolling through her phone. "There's one about 30 minutes from here." Elon shook his head. "I promised you mountains, snow, and the best hot chocolate you've ever tasted. A hotel by the highway can't deliver that." The truth was, he needed this trip as much as he hoped she did. The past year had been rough on their relationship. As Zia grew older, the distance between them seemed to widen. Not just physical distance, but emotional too. Sometimes he caught her looking at him like he was a stranger, or worse, just Elon Musk, the public figure, not her dad. "The rental guy said the roads are still clear," he added, climbing into the driver's seat. "And this thing has four-wheel drive." Shia slid into the passenger seat, still looking uncertain. "If you say so." The first 30 minutes of the drive were easy enough. The roads were plowed, and traffic was light. Elon found himself relaxing, for the first time in weeks. Beside him, Sia had her earbuds in, staring out at the passing landscape of snow-covered pines. "Hey," he said, gently tapping her arm. "Want to choose some music we can both listen to?" She pulled out an earbud. "You'd hate my music." "Try me." A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth as she connected her phone to the car's sound system. The car filled with the sounds of a band Elon had never heard of, but the melody was catchy, and the lyrics surprisingly thoughtful. "Not bad," he admitted. "Who is this?" For the next 20 minutes they talked about music. It wasn't world-changing conversation, but it was more than they'd shared in months. Elon felt a small weight lift from his shoulders. Maybe this weekend would work after all. That's when the first signs of trouble appeared. The snow was falling, heavier now, and the wind had picked up, creating swirling white clouds that sometimes made it hard to see more than a few yards ahead. The well-maintained highway had given way to a narrower mountain road, and the GPS signal on the dashboard kept cutting in and out. "Dad, maybe we should turn back," Zia said, her earlier smile replaced with concern. "We're more than halfway there," Elon replied, leaning forward in his seat as if that would help him see better through the thickening snow. Turning back would take longer than pushing forward. He'd made his fortune by pushing forward when others might have retreated. Risk assessment was second nature to him, and while the weather was deteriorating, the SUV was handling well on the snow-covered road. The storm wasn't in the forecast when they'd left that morning, just a light snowfall, nothing like this. The GPS flickered again, and then went dark. "Great," Gia muttered. "It's fine," Elon said, pulling out his phone. "I downloaded the directions before we left." But his phone showed no signal bars. The mountains and the storm were blocking reception. "I remember the route," he assured her, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "We follow this road for another 10 miles. Then there's a turnoff to the right." The windows were fogging up from their breath, and Elon turned the defrost higher. Outside, the day was fading fast, the storm bringing an early darkness. The headlights carved twin tunnels through the swirling snow, but it was getting harder to tell where the road ended and the shoulder began. "Dad," Sia said, her voice tight. "I think we missed the turn. We've gone way more than 10 miles. Elon frowned. She was right. They should have reached the turnoff by now. Had they passed it without noticing? The snow was covering everything, transforming the landscape into an alien world of white. "We'll find a place to turn around," he said. Just then, the SUV's wheels hit a patch of ice hidden beneath the fresh snow. Elon felt the vehicle begin to slide. He turned into the skid as he'd been taught, but the SUV kept moving sideways toward the edge of the road. Everything slowed down in that moment. He could see Zia's hands brace against the dashboard, could hear his own sharp intake of breath. The SUV slid off the road and tipped sideways into a shallow ditch. The impact wasn't hard, but Elon felt the seatbelt catch across his chest. Beside him, Zia let out a small cry of surprise. "Are you okay?" he asked immediately, turning to check on her. She nodded, eyes wide. "What happened?" "Black ice," he said grimly. "Are you hurt anywhere?" She moved her arms and legs experimentally. "I'm fine, just scared." Elon tried to restart the engine. It turned over, which was a good sign. But when he attempted to drive out of the ditch, the wheels just spun uselessly, digging deeper into the snow. "We're stuck," he admitted. He got out to assess the situation, the cold air hitting him like a physical blow. The SUV was tilted at about a 20-degree angle, its left side higher than the right. The wheels on the right side were sunk deep in snow. Even with four-wheel drive, they weren't going anywhere without help. Shia joined him outside, hugging herself against the cold. "Now what?" Elon looked up and down the road, hoping to see headlights, but there was nothing but swirling snow in every direction. He checked his phone again. Still no signal. "We have two options," he said, thinking aloud. "We can stay with the vehicle and wait for someone to come by, or we can try to walk back to where we last saw signs of civilization." "How far is that?" Zia asked. Elon tried to remember. They hadn't passed a house or business in at least 30 minutes of driving. Walking in this weather would be dangerous. "Too far," he admitted. "We're better off staying with the SUV. We have shelter, and we have some supplies." They climbed back into the vehicle. Elon turned the engine on to run the heater, but he knew they couldn't keep it running all night. They'd need to conserve fuel. "I'm sorry," he said after a long silence. "I should have listened to you." Sia didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quiet. "It's not your fault. You couldn't know the storm would get this bad." Elon rummaged through the center console and glove compartment, taking inventory of what they had. A flashlight, a small first aid kit, some energy bars he'd brought for the trip, and 2 bottles of water. In the back, they had their luggage with extra clothes, and he remembered seeing a blanket in the trunk. "We have enough to get through the night," he said, trying to sound positive. "In the morning, when the storm passes, we can figure out next steps." As darkness fell completely, the world outside the windows disappeared except for the endless dance of snowflakes in the headlight beams. Elon turned off the lights to conserve the battery, plunging them into near darkness. They sat in silence. For a while, the only sound the soft hum of the heater and the wind whistling outside. Every 15 minutes, Elon checked his phone, hoping for a miracle signal, but there was nothing. It was Zia who heard it first, a long, mournful sound cutting through the howl of the wind. "What was that?" she asked, sitting up straighter. Elon had heard it too. Probably just the wind, but then it came again, closer this time and unmistakable. A wolf's howl. "That's not the wind," Zia whispered. Elon switched on the flashlight and pointed it out the window. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness and falling snow. Then at the edge of the light's reach, he caught a glimpse of movement. 2 glowing eyes reflected the beam back at them, and then they were gone. "Dad?" Sia's voice was small now. "It's okay," he said, trying to keep his own voice steady. "Wolves rarely attack humans. They're probably just curious." Another howl rose from the darkness, answered by another from a different direction. Then a third. "How many are there?" Sia asked. Elon switched off the flashlight. "I don't know, but we're safe in here." As the night deepened around them, the howls grew more frequent. Occasionally, Elon would turn on the flashlight for a quick sweep, and more than once he caught sight of shadowy figures moving just beyond the reach of the light. The wolves were circling the vehicle. "Why are they doing that?" Zia asked, pulling her knees up to her chest. "We're in their territory," Elon replied, his mind racing through everything he knew about wolf behavior, which wasn't much, and were something unfamiliar. He checked the doors again to make sure they were locked, though he knew the wolves couldn't open them anyway. The temperature inside the SUV was dropping as he ran the heater less frequently to save fuel. He reached into the back seat and pulled out the blanket, wrapping it around Zia's shoulders. "Try to get some sleep," he said. "I'll keep watch." But they both knew sleep would be hard to come by with the knowledge that a pack of wolves was circling their stranded vehicle, somewhere in the vast wilderness of snow-covered mountains, miles from help. The night crept by slowly. Elon dozed off a few times, but never for more than a few minutes. Each time he woke with a start, his heart racing, immediately checking on Zia. She had finally fallen asleep, curled up under the blanket, her face peaceful despite their situation. He turned the engine on briefly every hour to warm the SUV, careful, to conserve their fuel. During one of these warming sessions, he noticed the fuel gauge. They had less than a quarter tank left. At this rate, they'd be out of fuel by mid-morning. Elon rubbed his tired eyes and looked out the window. The snowfall had lightened, and through breaks in the clouds he could see stars. The wolves had gone quiet for the last hour or so, but he didn't fool himself into thinking they had left. As if confirming his thoughts, a large shape moved past the front of the SUV. In the dim starlight, Elon could make out the form of a wolf, bigger than he'd expected, its coat a mix of gray and silver. The animal stopped directly in front of the vehicle and turned to look at them, its eyes reflecting what little light there was. "You're not getting in here," Elon whispered. The wolf held his gaze for a moment longer, then continued on its way, disappearing into the darkness. Shia stirred beside him. "Were you talking to someone?" she mumbled, half asleep. "Just thinking out loud," he replied. "Go back to sleep." But she sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I can't sleep anymore. What time is it?" Elon checked his watch. "Almost 5 in the morning. The wolves? Still around, I think, but quieter now." Shia peered out her window. "It stopped snowing. For now," Elon said. "The storm might just be taking a break." They sat in silence for a while, watching their breath form small clouds in the increasingly cold air of the SUV. "I'm hungry," Zia finally said. Elon reached for his backpack and pulled out 2 energy bars. "Breakfast of champions," he said with a forced smile, handing her one. They ate slowly, savoring each bite of the modest meal. Elon was calculating their chances. Once daylight came, they could try to walk out. But how far would they need to go? And what about the wolves? "Dad," Sia said, interrupting his thoughts. "The wolves are back." Elon looked out his window. She was right. In the growing pre-dawn light, he could make out several shapes moving around the SUV. He counted at least 6 wolves circling slowly, some stopping to sniff at the vehicle. "They're getting bolder," he muttered. "Why are they so interested in us?" Zia asked, her voice steady despite the fear Elon knew she must be feeling. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "We might be near their den or hunting ground, or maybe they're just curious about the strange metal box in their territory." The largest wolf, the silver one he'd seen earlier, approached Elon's door and stood on its hind legs, paws against the window, peering in. Its face was just inches from Elon's, separated only by the glass. Elon found himself staring into intelligent amber eyes. "Don't move," he told Zia, though she was on the other side of the vehicle. The wolf dropped back down after a few seconds and rejoined the others. The pack continued their patrol around the SUV, occasionally stopping to look in or sniff at the tires. "They're trying to figure us out," Zia said quietly. Elon nodded. "And decide if we're a threat or food." As the dawn broke fully, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold, Elon could finally see their surroundings clearly. They had slid off the road into a small clearing bordered by dense pine forest. The road itself was nearly invisible under the fresh snow, but he could make out where it curved about 50 yards ahead. The wolves were more visible now, too, 11 of them, varying in size and coloration, though most were gray or brown. The silver one was clearly the largest, and the others seemed to defer to it, keeping their distance when it approached. "That's the alpha," Sia said, following his gaze. "The leader." "You know about wolves?" Elon asked, surprised. She shrugged. "I did a project on them last year. They're actually pretty amazing. They have complex social structures and communication systems." Elon studied his daughter's face. There was fear there, yes, but also something else. A kind of fascination. He realized he had no idea she was interested in wildlife. It was one of the many things he'd missed by being so busy with his companies. "What else do you know about them?" he asked. For the next 20 minutes, as the wolves continued their circling, Jia told him about wolf pack behavior, their hunting strategies, and their importance to the ecosystem. Her knowledge was impressive, and Elon found himself listening, with genuine interest, momentarily forgetting their predicament. "And they can run up to 35 miles per hour in short bursts," she was saying, when a sudden movement caught their attention. 3 of the wolves had broken away from the pack and were heading into the forest. A moment later, 2 more followed. "Where are they going?" Elon wondered aloud. "Maybe to hunt," Sia suggested. "They usually hunt in the early morning." Soon, only the silver alpha and 2 smaller wolves remained, watching the SUV from about 20 yards away. "This might be our chance," Elon said, reaching for the door handle. Shia grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" "We need to try to get back to the road. With most of the pack gone, we might be able to make it. There are still 3 wolves out there." "I know, but we can't stay here forever. We're almost out of fuel, which means no heat, and we don't have enough food to wait for rescue." Elon looked her in the eyes. "Do you trust me?" After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Okay, here's the plan," he said, thinking rapidly. "We grab whatever we can carry that might be useful. We stay together, move slowly, and don't run. Running might trigger their chase instinct. We head for the road and follow it back the way we came. What if the wolves attack?" Elon reached into the back seat and pulled out a tire iron from the emergency kit. "I don't want to hurt them, but we need to be able to defend ourselves if necessary." They quickly gathered their supplies, the remaining energy bars, water bottles, their phones, and some extra clothing layers. Elon found a small canister of bear spray in the emergency kit. Not ideal for wolves, but better than nothing. "Ready?" he asked, his hand on the door. Shia took a deep breath and nodded. Elon opened his door slowly. The cold air rushed in, much colder than he'd anticipated. He stepped out cautiously, tire iron in one hand, watching the 3 wolves. They stood at attention now, ears forward, eyes fixed on him. Shia slipped out behind him, staying close. "Remember, slow movements," Elon murmured. "We're just passing through." They began walking toward the road, each step crunching in the deep snow. The wolves watched but didn't approach. 50 yards to the road, 40, 30. Then the silver alpha moved, trotting parallel to their path but keeping its distance. The other 2 wolves followed its lead, spreading out to flank them. "Dad," Sia whispered, her voice tight with fear. "Keep walking," Elon said calmly, though his heart was hammering in his chest. "They're just escorting us out of their territory. 20 yards from the road. 15. 10. A howl echoed through the trees, coming from the direction the other wolves had gone. The silver alpha stopped, ears perked, listening. After a moment, it howled back, a long, mournful sound that sent shivers down Elon's spine. More howls answered, closer now. The rest of the pack was returning. "We need to move faster," Elon said, picking up the pace. They reached the road just as the first of the returning wolves emerged from the trees. The pack was reuniting, forming a loose semicircle around Elon and Zia. "Which way?" Zia asked, looking up and down the snow-covered road. Elon pointed in the direction they'd been driving the night before. That way should eventually lead to the cabin, or at least some signs of civilization. They began walking, keeping to the middle of the road where the snow wasn't as deep. The wolves followed at a distance, sometimes disappearing into the trees only to reappear further ahead. "Why are they following us?" Zia asked. "I'm not sure," Elon admitted. "But as long as they keep their distance, we'll be okay." They walked for nearly an hour, the sun now fully up but providing little warmth. The road curved and dipped through the mountainous terrain, and Elon was beginning to worry they were heading deeper into the wilderness rather than toward civilization. She was struggling with the deep snow, her breaths coming in white puffs. "Can we take a break?" she asked. Elon looked around. They were in a small clearing beside the road, bordered by pine trees heavy with snow. "Just a quick one," he agreed. They brushed snow off a fallen log and sat down. Elon handed Zia a water bottle, and she drank gratefully. The wolves had stopped too, keeping about 50 yards back. The silver alpha sat on its haunches, watching them intently. "It's like they're waiting for something," Zia said, following his gaze. Elon nodded. "Or waiting for us to do something." "What if—" Zia began, but she was interrupted by a new sound, a deep rumbling from further up the road. Elon stood up, straining to hear. "Is that an engine?" The rumbling grew louder, and then around the bend in the road a snowplow appeared, its bright orange color stark against the white landscape. "Hey!" Elon shouted, waving his arms above his head. "Over. Here." The plow slowed as the driver spotted them. Elon turned to tell Zia they were saved, but his words died in his throat. The wolves were gone, vanished into the forest as silently as ghosts. The snowplow ground to a halt beside them, and the driver, a middle-aged man in a heavy coat, leaned out the window. "You folks okay? What are you doing out here on foot?" "Our SUV slid off the road last night," Elon explained. "We've been trying to walk back to civilization." The driver nodded. "Lucky I found you. There's another storm coming in, bigger than last night's. Hop in, I'll get you somewhere safe." As they climbed into the warm cab of the snowplow, Elon looked back at the forest one last time. For a brief moment he thought he saw a flash of silver among the trees, the alpha watching them leave. "Dad?" Zia said, following his gaze. "Do you see something?" Elon shook his head. "Just shadows." But as the snowplow pulled away, carrying them to safety, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter with the wolves wasn't over, that somehow the pack had a purpose in mind, and they were only in the middle of a much larger story. The snowplow driver's name was Pete, and he'd been clearing these mountain roads for 27 years. "Never seen a winter like this one," he told them, as the massive vehicle pushed through the snow. "3 big storms already, and it's only January." Elon and Zia sat close together in the warm cab, their hands wrapped around hot coffee from Pete's thermos. The simple warmth felt like pure luxury after their night in the cold SUV. "You said our vehicle slid off the road back there?" Pete asked. "Want me to pull it out for you? Got chains in the back." Elon shook his head. "Thanks, but I think we're done with our wilderness adventure. Is there a town nearby where we could get a room?" "Pine Ridge is about 20 miles ahead. Small place, but they've got a decent motel." Pete glanced at them. "Gotta ask, though, what's Elon Musk doing out here in the middle of nowhere?" Shia looked at her father, a small smile playing on her lips. Even with his disheveled hair and stubble, from their ordeal, people still recognized him. "Trying to have a weekend away with my daughter," Elon replied. "It didn't quite go as planned." Pete nodded. "Those wolves give you any trouble? This area's got one of the largest packs in the state." Elon and Zia exchanged looks. "They kept their distance mostly," Elon said carefully. "But they seemed interested in us. Not surprised. Something odd about that pack. Ranger friends of mine have been studying them for years. They don't behave like normal wolves." Pete took a sip of his coffee. "Some folks around here think they're special somehow. Protected." "Protected?" Shia asked. "Local legend says they've been in these mountains for hundreds of years. The native tribes believed they were spirit guardians or something." Pete shrugged. "I don't know about all that, but I've seen them do some strange things." Smarter than your average wolves. The snowplow rounded a bend, and Pete pointed to a small cluster of buildings in the valley below. There's Pine Ridge. We'll have you there in 20 minutes. As they descended toward the town, Elon found himself looking back at the forest-covered mountains. The wolves were out there somewhere. He couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter had meant something. The Pine Ridge Motel was a modest place with wood-paneled walls and quilts on the beds that looked handmade. The owner, a friendly woman named Dorothy, was excited to have Elon Musk staying at her establishment but promised to keep it quiet. "The storm's coming in fast," she warned as she handed them their room keys. "Might be stuck here a couple days. Restaurant across the street stays open no matter the weather, though." After hot showers and a change of clothes, Elon and Zia sat in a booth at the diner, warm and comfortable but strangely subdued. The events of the night before felt dreamlike now. "Penny for your thoughts," Elon said, watching his daughter stare out the window at the snow that had started falling again. "I keep thinking about them," she admitted. "The wolves, especially the silver one." "The alpha," Elon nodded. "Me too. Did you notice how they never actually threatened us? They just watched and followed." Zia turned to look at him. "What if they were protecting us?" Elon raised an eyebrow. "From what?" "I don't know. But Pete said they're not normal wolves." Their food arrived. Hot, simple comfort food that tasted better than any fancy meal Elon could remember. As they ate, they discussed what to do next. The cabin they'd booked was still out there somewhere, but with another storm coming, it seemed wiser to head back to the city once the roads cleared. "I'm sorry this trip was a disaster," Elon said as they finished their meal. To his surprise, Zia shook her head. "It wasn't, though. I mean, being stuck in a snowstorm surrounded by wolves wasn't on my bucket list, but..." She hesitated. "It's the most time we've spent together in ages." Elon felt something catch in his throat. "Yeah," he managed. "And you weren't on your phone the whole time," she added with a small smile. He laughed. "Hard to check emails with no signal." After dinner, they returned to the motel. Dorothy had left them extra blankets and a small electric heater. Outside, the snow was falling heavily again, the wind driving it into drifts against the buildings. Elon was exhausted, but sleep wouldn't come. He lay awake, listening to the wind and thinking about everything that had happened. In the other bed, Zia's breathing had settled into the rhythm of sleep. He was almost drifting off when a sound caught his attention, a familiar sound that made his eyes snap open. A wolf's howl, distant but unmistakable. Elon got up and went to the window, pulling back the curtain. The motel parking lot was buried under fresh snow, illuminated by a single lamppost. Beyond it, the main street of Pine Ridge was dark and deserted. The howl came again, closer this time. Elon scanned the edges of the parking lot where it met the surrounding forest. At first he saw nothing. Then a shadow moved, separating itself from the darkness of the trees. The silver alpha stepped into the pool of light cast by the lamppost. It stood perfectly still, looking directly at the motel, at Elon's window, it seemed. "Impossible," Elon whispered. They were miles from where they'd encountered the pack. The wolf couldn't have followed them here, especially not through a snowstorm. Yet, there it was, its silver coat gleaming in the artificial light. "Dad?" Zia's sleepy voice came from behind him. "What are you looking at?" Elon didn't take his eyes off the wolf. "Come see for yourself." Zia joined him at the window, and he heard her sharp intake of breath. "It's him, the alpha." "It can't be," Elon said. "We're too far from where we were." "It's him," Zia insisted. "Look at the marking on his shoulder, that darker patch. It's the same wolf." She was right. Now that she mentioned it, Elon could see the distinctive marking, a swirl of darker fur on the wolf's right shoulder. "How did he find us?" Elon murmured. "They can track scents for miles," Zia said. "But through a snowstorm? In a snowplow?" She shook her head. "It doesn't make sense." The wolf remained where it was, watching the motel. Then, deliberately, it turned and took a few steps toward the forest, before stopping and looking back. It wants us to follow, Sia said quietly. Elon shot her a look. We're not following a wolf into the forest in the middle of a snowstorm. Dad, there's something weird going on here. Pete said this pack is different. What if they're trying to show us something? Or lead us somewhere to eat us, Elon countered. If they wanted to hurt us, they could have done it when we were stuck in the SUV or when we were walking on the road. Sia's eyes were wide with excitement now, sleep forgotten. Dad, this is amazing. No one gets experiences like this. The wolf howled again, the sound seeming to cut through the howling wind. Then it took a few more steps toward the forest and looked back again. Elon rubbed his face. This was crazy. The sensible thing to do was go back to bed and forget about it. They'd had a narrow escape and they shouldn't push their luck. Yet something about the wolf's behavior nagged at him. Throughout his career, Elon had learned to trust his instincts to see patterns where others saw coincidence. And every instinct he had was telling him there was more to the story. We can't go out in this storm, he said finally. But in the morning, if it's still there. Sia nodded, understanding. They returned to their beds, but Elon knew neither of them would sleep much now. Morning brought clear skies and bright sunshine that made the snow-covered landscape sparkle. The storm had dropped another foot of snow overnight, but it had moved on, leaving perfect blue skies in its wake. Elon and Gia dressed warmly and went to the diner for breakfast. Through the window, they could see town workers clearing the main street with shovels and a small plow. Do you think it's still out there? Sia asked over her pancakes. Only one way to find out, Elon replied. After breakfast, they borrowed 2 pairs of snowshoes from Dorothy, who warned them not to stray too far from town with another storm possibly on the way. They promised to be careful and headed toward the edge of town where they'd seen the wolf the night before. The forest was quiet under its blanket of snow, the only sounds their breathing and the crunch of their snowshoes. They found tracks, wolf tracks, leading away from town and into the trees. Should we follow them? Sia asked. Elon hesitated. Everything about this was unconventional, possibly dangerous. But the curiosity that had driven him to build rockets and electric cars wouldn't let him turn back now. Stay close to me, he said. They followed the tracks for about 20 minutes, moving deeper into the forest. The trees grew thicker, and the snow beneath them was not as deep, making walking easier. The wolf tracks were joined by others. The rest of the pack was here, too. Dad, Sia said suddenly, grabbing his arm. Look. Through the trees ahead, Elon could see a clearing, and in it, the silver alpha sat waiting. As they approached, the wolf stood and trotted toward a path that led up a small rise. At the top of the rise, it stopped and looked back at them. It really does want us to follow, Elon murmured. They climbed the rise, following the wolf. At the top, the trees opened up to reveal a breathtaking view of the valley below and the mountains beyond, but it was what lay directly ahead that made them both stop in their tracks. A cabin, small but sturdy, stood in a clearing protected by tall pines. Smoke rose from its chimney. Is that? Shia began. I think it's our cabin, Elon finished, amazed. The one we were trying to reach. The wolf had led them to their original destination by a route they never would have found on their own. As they stood there, stunned, the silver alpha turned and loped back into the forest, disappearing among the trees. Elon and Sia looked at each other, both trying to process what had just happened. How did it know? Sia whispered. Elon shook his head. I have no idea, but I think we're meant to be here. They approached the cabin cautiously. There was a note pinned to the door. Mr. Musk, heard you were in town. Your things from the SUV are inside. Cabin's all ready for you. Pete. Inside, they found a warm fire in the fireplace, their luggage rescued from the stranded SUV, and supplies for their planned weekend, all arranged by the helpful snowplow, driver who must have put 2 and 2 together after dropping them in town. Shia went to the window that overlooked the forest. Do you think they'll come back? The wolves? Elon joined her, putting an arm around her shoulders. I don't know, but something tells me we haven't seen the last of them. As if in answer, A howl echoed from the forest, distant but clear in the crisp mountain air. A promise, or perhaps an invitation. The cabin was everything Elon had hoped for when he booked it. Rustic but comfortable, with large windows framing the snow-covered mountains, a well-stocked kitchen, and a stone fireplace that kept the main room warm and cozy. Under normal circumstances, it would have been the perfect place for a quiet weekend away, but circumstances were far from normal. "Do you think we should tell someone?" Gia asked as they sat by the fire that evening. "About the wolves, I mean. How they led us here." Elon considered the question. Who would believe us? Pete might. He said the pack was special. Special is one thing. Wolves that somehow knew where we were trying to go and deliberately led us there? Elon shook his head. That's a whole different level. They fell silent, watching the flames dance. The events of the past 24 hours had left them both thoughtful, nearly freezing in a stranded SUV surrounded by wolves being rescued by a snowplow, and then guided to their cabin by the very animals that many would consider dangerous predators. It was a lot to process. "I've been thinking," Elon said finally, "about what you said earlier, that this pack might be protecting us." Sia looked up. "You believe it now?" "I don't know what to believe, but I keep coming back to the fact that they never acted aggressively toward us. And somehow that silver alpha found us in town and led us here." He gestured around the cabin. "To safety. But why us? Why would they care about us?" It was the question that had been nagging at Elon since they arrived at the cabin. Why would a pack of wolves take an interest in two random humans? "Maybe it's not about us specifically," he said slowly, thinking out loud. "Maybe it's something they do. Help people who are lost or in danger in their territory." Shia nodded, considering this. Like Pete said, guardians. The word hung in the air between them. It sounded mystical, something from a story rather than real life. Yet they couldn't deny what they had experienced. "I want to learn more about them," Sia said suddenly. "Their habits, their territory, why they behave the way they do. And how do you propose we do that?" A smile spread across her face. "We observe them. We go out during the day, find a safe spot, and watch." Elon raised an eyebrow. "You want us to go looking for the wolves?" "They've already found us twice. I think they'll find us again if they want to. But we could try to understand them better." Her eyes were bright with excitement. "Dad, this could be important. If these wolves really do help people, that's amazing. It could change how we think about animal intelligence." It was a side of his daughter Elon hadn't seen before, passionate, curious, scientifically minded. He realized with a pang that he'd been missing so much of her life, her interests, her growth. "Okay," he said, "but we take precautions. We stay together. We don't go too far from the cabin, and we bring supplies in case the weather turns." Sia's face lit up. "Really? We can do it?" "First thing tomorrow," Elon promised. "For now, let's get some sleep in actual beds." They slept deeply that night, exhausted from their ordeal and comforted by the security of the cabin. No wolf howls disturbed their rest. Morning brought another clear, cold day. After a hearty breakfast, they bundled up in their warmest clothes and packed a small backpack with water, snacks, a first aid kit, and a satellite phone that Elon had found in the cabin's emergency supplies. "Where should we start?" Sia asked. As they stood outside, the snow crunching beneath their boots, Elon surveyed the surrounding forest. The cabin sat on a small plateau with good visibility in all directions. To the east, the land sloped gently upward toward higher peaks. To the west, it fell away toward the valley where Pine Ridge lay. "The tracks from yesterday led from that direction," he said, pointing north. "Let's start there." They followed the tree line, looking for signs of the wolves. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, covering most of the previous day's tracks, but occasionally they spotted paw prints where the snow was thinner under the trees. "They've been here recently," Sia said, crouching to examine a clear set of tracks. "These are from this morning." Elon was impressed by her knowledge. "How can you tell?" "The edges are still sharp. If they were older, they'd be more rounded from the sun or wind. She stood up. My science teacher last semester was really into tracking. He took our class out to learn about it. Another glimpse into her life that Elon had missed. What else did you learn? As they walked, Sia told him about her science class, her favorite teachers, the marine biology club she had joined, and her plans for a science fair project on ecosystem recovery after wildfires. Elon listened, asking questions, realizing how little he knew about her daily life. They had been walking for about an hour when they came to a small ridge overlooking a narrow valley. Below them, a frozen stream wound its way through the trees. "This is perfect," Sia said. "We can see a lot from here and we're not too exposed." They brushed snow from a fallen log and sat down, taking in the view. The day was still and quiet, the kind of silence that only comes with deep snow and distance from civilization. "What if they don't show up?" Elon asked after they had been sitting for 20 minutes. "They will," Sia said with confidence. "I can feel it." And strangely enough, so could Elon. There was something about this place that felt watched, as if the forest itself was aware of their presence. Another 30 minutes passed. They sipped hot tea from a thermos and shared a package of trail mix. Elon found himself relaxing, enjoying the simple act of sitting in nature with his daughter. No screens, no meetings, no demands on his attention. "I should do this more often," he said softly. "Sit in the freezing cold looking for wolves?" Sia teased. "Spend time with you, real time, not just being in the same room while I work." Her smile faded and she looked down. "I'd like that." "I know I haven't been very present," Elon continued, the words coming more easily than he'd expected. "Building these companies, trying to push humanity forward, it takes a lot of time, but that's not an excuse." "I understand why your work is important," Sia said. "I just wish—" "What?" She shrugged. "I wish I felt like I was important too." The words hit Elon like a physical blow. "You are. You're the most important thing in my life. Then why don't I see you more than a few hours a week?" It was a fair question, and one he didn't have a good answer for. Before he could try to respond, a movement at the edge of the trees below caught his attention. "Look," he whispered. The silver alpha emerged from the forest, followed by 3 other wolves. They moved with purpose, trotting along the frozen stream. Sia and Elon sat perfectly still, watching. The wolves showed no sign that they had noticed the humans on the ridge above. "They're hunting," Sia whispered. The pack spread out, moving with coordination that spoke of long practice. 2 wolves disappeared into the trees on the far side of the stream, while the alpha and the 4th wolf continued along the bank. "They're driving something toward the others," Elon realized. Sure enough, a few moments later, a deer burst from the trees, running directly toward where the 2 hidden wolves waited. The chase was brief. One wolf grabbed the deer's hind leg while the other went for the throat. It was over in seconds. "Nature is brutal," Elon murmured. "But efficient," Sia added, "and they only take what they need." They watched as the alpha and the 4th wolf rejoined the others. What happened next surprised them both. Instead of immediately feeding on the deer, the wolves stood back while the alpha approached the carcass. It took a few bites, then stepped away, allowing the others to feed. "It's their hierarchy," Sia explained. "The alpha eats first, then the rest of the pack according to their rank." As she spoke, the alpha's head suddenly snapped up, looking directly at their ridge. Elon and Sia froze. "Do you think it can see us?" Elon whispered. "Definitely," Sia replied. "They have excellent vision, and we're not exactly hidden." The alpha stared at them for a long moment, then, to their astonishment, began trotting up the slope toward their position. "Should we move?" Elon asked, tensing. "No," Sia said. "Let's stay still. I don't think it means us harm." The wolf approached to within 20 feet of their log, close enough that Elon could see the amber flecks in its eyes. It stood regarding them calmly, showing no signs of aggression. "It remembers us," Sia said softly. The wolf took a step closer, and Elon felt his heart rate increase. Despite their previous encounters, this was still a wild predator, powerful and potentially dangerous. Then, the wolf did something truly unexpected. It turned its head and looked back the way it had come, then at them again, repeating the gesture. It wants us to follow, Sia said, standing slowly. Just like last night. Sia, wait, Elon began, but she was already taking a cautious step forward. The wolf turned and trotted a few paces down the slope, then looked back again. We have to go, Sia insisted. It's trying to show us something. Every rational part of Elon's brain was screaming that this was a bad idea, but he had already seen enough inexplicable behavior from these wolves to doubt his rational assessment. Stay behind me, he said, standing to join her. They followed the wolf down the slope, picking their way carefully through the snow. The other wolves had dragged the deer carcass into the trees and were no longer visible. The alpha led them along the frozen stream for several hundred yards, then up another slope into a denser part of the forest. The trees here were older, massive pines that blocked much of the sunlight, creating a cathedral-like atmosphere of hushed shadows. Where is it taking us? Elon wondered aloud. The wolf stopped suddenly, turning to look at them. Then it raised its head and let out a low howl. The sound echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down Elon's spine. An answering howl came from somewhere ahead. There are more of them, Elon said, stopping. Sia, I think we should go back. She hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. The wolf looked at them, then ahead, then back at them again. A little further, she pleaded. We can always turn back. They continued forward, the wolf leading them deeper into the old-growth forest. The trees began to thin, and ahead, Elon could see a clearing. As they approached the edge of the clearing, the wolf stopped again. It looked at them intently as if making sure they were still following, then stepped into the open space. Elon and Sia moved to the edge of the trees and stopped, stunned by what they saw. The clearing was roughly circular, surrounded by ancient pines. In the center was what appeared to be a natural hot spring, steam rising from its surface into the cold air. Around the spring lay at least 15 wolves, the rest of the pack. But what made Elon's breath catch was not the wolves themselves, but what was among them. A man sat on a fallen log by the spring, dressed in worn outdoor gear, his white beard reaching to his chest. He was talking softly to one of the wolves that lay at his feet, his hand gently stroking its fur. The silver alpha trotted over to the man, who looked up as it approached. The wolf made a soft sound in its throat, and the man's gaze followed, to where Elon and Sia stood at the edge of the clearing. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the man stood tall and straight despite his apparent age, and raised a hand in greeting. Well, he called, his voice strong and clear in the winter. Airs, it seems my friends have brought me some visitors. Elon and Sia stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, unsure what to do. The man with the white beard seemed to sense their hesitation. Don't worry, he called. They won't hurt you. They brought you here after all. Sia looked at her father. Should we? Elon studied the scene. The wolves appeared relaxed, some lying down, others moving casually around the clearing. The man showed no signs of fear despite being surrounded by what most people would consider dangerous predators. Stay close to me, Elon said, and they stepped into the clearing. The wolves watched them but made no move to approach. The silver alpha had returned to the man's side and sat at his feet, alert but calm. As they drew closer, Elon could see that the man was older than he first appeared, perhaps in his 70s, with deep lines etched into his weathered face. His eyes, though, were bright and sharp, taking in every detail of the newcomers. I'm Tom, the man said, extending a hand as they approached, and I suspect these friends of mine have been giving you quite an adventure. Elon shook his hand. Elon, and this is my daughter Sia. If Tom recognized Elon's name, he gave no sign of it. Sit, please, he said, gesturing to some flat rocks beside the hot spring. You must have questions. The warmth from the spring was a welcome relief from the cold. As they sat, several of the wolves moved closer, curious but not threatening. "Who are you?" Zia asked. "How are you out here with them?" Tom smiled. "I've been asking myself that same question for nearly 30 years. He reached down to stroke the silver alpha's head. "As for who I am, I used to be a wildlife biologist. I came to study this pack when I was about your father's age, and, well, I never really left." "You live out here? With wolves?" Elon couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. "Not year-round, not anymore. I'm too old for the deepest part of winter now. I have a small cabin about a mile from here, but I spend most days with them." Tom looked around at the pack with unmistakable affection. "They're my family now." "But how?" Gia pressed. "Wolves are wild animals. They don't usually accept humans like this." Tom nodded. "You're right. And that's what makes this pack special." He paused, seeming to consider how much to share. "When I first came here, I was tracking reports of unusual wolf behavior. Stories of hikers being led to safety when lost, injured animals being protected from predators, even children who wandered away from campgrounds being watched over until they were found." "Like what they did for us," Elon said. "Exactly. Most scientists dismiss these stories as folklore or coincidence, but I'd studied wolf behavior for years, and there were aspects of these reports that intrigued me." Tom's eyes took on a faraway look. "So I set up camp in these mountains and waited. And they found you," Gia guessed. Tom smiled. "Not at first. For weeks I saw nothing but tracks and heard distant howls. Then one night, I got caught in a sudden storm. My tent collapsed, my equipment was scattered, and I was in real danger of freezing to death." He looked down at the Silver Alpha. "That's when I met Silver's grandfather. He and 2 other wolves appeared at my camp. I thought they were going to attack, but instead they led me to a small cave where I could shelter from the storm. They stayed with me all night, keeping me warm. Just like they stayed with us in the SUV," Sia said, excitement in her voice. "The next day," Tom continued, "they led me to this hot spring. It's what keeps them going through the winter. A warm place to gather. And over time, they accepted me." "But why?" Elon asked. "Why would wolves behave this way toward humans?" Tom shrugged. "That's the question I've spent 3 decades trying to answer. The best I can tell you is that this particular pack has developed a unique culture, passed down through generations. They've learned that humans can be allies, not just threats, and they've developed a kind of guardianship over this territory." As they talked, the wolves had gradually moved closer. One younger wolf approached Zia cautiously, sniffing the air around her. "She's curious about you," Tom said. "Hold out. Your hand, palm down, and let her come to you." Zia did as instructed, her face a mixture of fear and wonder. The young wolf sniffed her hand, then gently pushed its head against her fingers. "She likes you," Tom said with a smile. "This is amazing," she whispered, carefully stroking the wolf's fur. Elon watched, torn between parental concern and amazement. Nothing in his experience, not building rockets, not revolutionizing the auto industry, had prepared him for this moment. Watching his daughter pet a wild wolf in a secret clearing in the mountains. "Have you told anyone about them?" Elon asked. Tom. "Published your findings?" A shadow crossed Tom's face. "I did in the beginning. Wrote papers, gave presentations. But no one believed me without proof, and I refused to reveal their location or disturb them with research teams and cameras." He sighed. "Eventually, I stopped trying to convince others and just devoted myself to understanding them, protecting them. But this could change how we think about animal intelligence, about wolves," Sia said. "It could also lead to tourists and thrill seekers invading their territory," Tom countered gently. "Or worse, people who might see them as a threat, to be eliminated." The Silver Alpha, Silver as Tom called him, stood suddenly, ears alert. A moment later, the other wolves also tensed, looking toward the forest. "What is it?" Elon asked. Tom tilted his head, listening. "Storm's coming. They can sense it hours before it hits." Sure enough, Elon could now see dark clouds gathering on the horizon, moving quickly toward them. "We should get back to the cabin," he said, standing. Tom nodded. "Silver will show you the fastest way back. It's not the route you came. There's a more direct path through the eastern ridge." "You're not coming?" Sia asked. "My cabin's in the other direction," Tom said. "Besides, I think this meeting was meant for you two, not me." Elon wasn't sure what to make of that statement, but the darkening sky made him anxious to get moving. "How will we find our way?" Tom smiled. "The same way you found the cabin yesterday. Trust Silver. He knows exactly where you're staying." If understanding, the silver wolf moved to the edge of the clearing and looked back at them expectantly. "Before you go," Tom said, "may I ask what brought you to these mountains in the first place?" Elon looked at Sia, then back at Tom. "I wanted to reconnect with my daughter. I've been absent too much." Tom's weathered face softened. "Then perhaps now you understand why the wolves brought you here to me." "What do you mean?" 30 years ago, I was just like you. Driven, focused on my career, convinced my research was the most important thing in the world." Tom's voice grew quieter. "I had a daughter too, but I missed so much of her life chasing my ambitions. By the time I realized what mattered, she had grown up without me." The words hit Elon hard. "Is that why you stayed here, because you had nothing to go back to?" Tom shook his head. "I stayed because I found something here I never found in my previous life. Balance, purpose that didn't come at the expense of connection." He looked at Sia. "These wolves understand something many humans forget, that the pack is everything, not status, not achievement, not individual glory. The pack." The first distant rumble of thunder underscored his words. "You should go," Tom said, standing. "The storm will be here within the hour." Elon had 1,000 more questions, but the urgency in Tom's voice was clear. "How can we find you again?" Tom smiled. "If you need to, Silver will bring you. But I think you've already found what you came here for." He looked meaningfully from Elon to Sia. They said their goodbyes, and Silver led them away from the clearing, along a narrow path through the trees that they hadn't noticed before. The other wolves remained with Tom by the hot spring. The journey back to their cabin was surprisingly quick. The route Silver took was much more direct than their wandering path earlier. As they emerged from the forest within sight of the cabin, the first fat snowflakes began to fall. Silver stopped at the edge of the trees, not approaching the cabin itself. "Thank you," Sia said to the wolf, her voice thick with emotion. Silver regarded them both with those intelligent amber eyes, then turned and disappeared into the forest, just as the snow began falling in earnest. Elon and Sia hurried into the cabin. As the storm broke around them, they built up the fire and sat watching the snow through the windows, each lost in thought. "Do you think we'll see them again?" Sia finally asked. "I don't know," Elon admitted. "But I hope so." "And Tom, do you believe his story?" Elon considered this. Under normal circumstances, he would have dismissed such a tale as fantasy. But after what they had experienced themselves, "I believe he believes it," Elon said carefully. "And after what we've seen, I'm inclined to think he's telling the truth." She nodded, satisfied with this answer. "Dad? I want to study them. Not right now, but someday. I want to understand how they develop this behavior, this connection with humans." Elon looked at his daughter, seeing her in a new light. The passion in her voice, the determination in her eyes. It reminded him of himself at her age, burning with curiosity about how the world worked. "If anyone can figure it out, it's you," he said softly. The storm intensified outside, wind howling around the cabin in a way that reminded them of the wolves' calls. But inside, they were warm and safe, and somehow changed by their experience. "When we go home," Elon said, "things are going to be different." Sia looked at him questioningly. "I'm going to be present, really present, not just in the same room, but actually there with you." He took a deep breath. "No matter how important the work seems, it's not more important than you." Tears welled in Sia's eyes. "Do you promise?" "I promise." And for the first time in years, Elon felt certain he could keep this commitment. The wolves had shown him something he had been too busy to see. That the connections we make, the pack we build, matter more than any achievement. That night, as the storm raged outside, a wolf howl rose above the wind, a single clear call in the darkness. Elon and Zia went to the window and looked out, but could see nothing in the swirling snow. "They're still watching over us," Zia said, her voice filled with wonder. Elon put his arm around her shoulders. "Yes," he agreed. "I believe they are." In that moment, surrounded by the wild winter and protected by creatures he would never fully understand, Elon felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time, a perfect sense of being exactly where he was meant to be, with exactly who he was meant to be with. The wolves had given them more than safety. They had given them a way back to each other,